Round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind.
Visit StogieGeeks.com/Debonaire for a list of retailers who carry Debonaire cigars. Buy some today and get a little more Debonaire.
Welcome back to the Stogie Geeks Show, episode 188. Will Cooper from Studio C in North Carolina, being joined by my co-host Aaron Loomis of Developing Palates. Aaron, welcome back.
Thank you.
And so the Debonaire Ideal segment, we what we do is we tend to talk about, it's a little more of a cigar lifestyle segment where we try to connect cigars to more the conduits of kind of everyday life, or we talk about something that's cigar specific. And I picked this topic of cigar scoring tonight specifically with you in mind because cigar scoring is something that I've actually struggled with in a lot. In it, I do think we do need to score cigars, and we kind of hit on some of the points in the first segment right now. But Aaron, obviously you do score cigars, but do you think it is a necessary evil to score a cigar?
I think it is. I think without it, you're kind of leaving even more up to the imagination of the reader or listener as to kind of how to rate it, or how to say, did he like this cigar better than a different cigar? And unless if you're just saying, yes, I like it, no, I don't like it, that doesn't give people enough information, I don't think, to kind of utilize your information as a guide.
Exactly. Yeah, and I agree with that. And there's a lot of ways that you kind of touched on this in the first segment. I want to expand on it a bit. When you score a cigar, there are different. You put the emphasis on flavor, which I think is key. Now, a couple of things that I've actually, and I think you and I may have talked about this once before, but there's a couple of things I don't think that should be scored on a cigar. And the two components that I look at, and I don't think they should factor in, is one is the pre-light draw, and the second is actually the appearance. What are your thoughts on that?
100% with you on that. Those aspects don't matter in regards to your smoking experience, unless you're completely a status smoker. I mean, for me, the wrapper could be pink and there could be veins sticking out of it, but if it tastes really good, I don't care. So, to me, they don't matter in regards to a rating of the cigar.
I actually at one time was factoring in appearance, and if what I discovered is it was very much inflating the rating, was my feeling.
Yeah, you're adding points to a category that, if we have the opinion it doesn't matter, then it doesn't work. Right,
and it was. And the other thing is, I've had discussions with people where I said, well, how much they do factor appearance, and how much? 20%. I said 20% is an awful lot to factor in how the cigar looks.
Right.
You want to go 5 points? I can deal with that, but again, you smoke, for example, like in my opinion, for example, San Andreas cigars are gritty and they're not always the most elegant looking cigars. I've come now after wearing a lot of egg on my face to appreciate some San Andreas cigars for what they bring to the table. So that shouldn't, like you said, it shouldn't factor into that. Pre-light is kind of the same thing because, there's no combustion going on. So again, it's kind of, I look at pre-light as kind of the appetizer. What can I expect out of it, more or less?
Yeah, and you don't always get the same flavors pre-light as you do once flame has been brought to the cigar. So at least rarely for me, I may get a flavor that comes in later on down the cigar and say, I had that in the pre-light, but it's not going to be the same experience.
No, exactly. And then, the same thing, I know we kind of touched on this with burn and draw. I think I've seen some people score them as high as, 15 to 20% as well. And I've had discussions. I also think that's a little too high.
Mm-hmm.
From my point
Yeah.
of view, yeah.
Go ahead.
I think from my point of view, you're always going to touch up a cigar to some extent. And I'm actually going to be making some changes for how I rate burn and draw probably in the next month or two, where I'm going to get a little more granular with it because I think I'm too broad with it. But in general, I don't think if you're touching up a cigar, that doesn't mean you have a bad burn.
Right.
And yeah,
it's just more of a look thing kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's not really affecting the cigar burning or the smoking experience or the flavor.
Yeah, exactly. What about the other one that I get a lot is price. So this is one reason why Cigar Coop has 2 ratings. Like everyone asks, why do you have 2 ratings? For example, so the numerical score is strictly a merit score of the cigar, but we have the Stogie Geeks rating, which was put in place well before, and that's where we factor in the value component to it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we don't score. We don't include price in the rating. But I do think it's important kind of after the fact. Like when you're thinking about it in the moment when you're smoking, you're like, man, this is a $12 cigar. It should score higher than a $6 cigar. Maybe. It depends on what you think how it should work. But I'm going to give a free idea out there to any of the bloggers that want to run with this. And I've toyed with it and maybe we'll do it. But after the fact, based on your scoring system, if you wanted to, you could just create a ratio based on your score to the dollar amount. And then you could have a completely new rating to rank all those cigars based on price versus points. And then you would have a new ratio. And you could basically sort them based on that and say, all right, this is a $15 cigar. Let's say we're using a 100-point system. This $15 cigar scored a 92, but then this $5 cigar scored a 92. Now your dollar per point is very different.
Yeah.
So if you're more of a budget smoker or you're just price conscious, why wouldn't you just go at the $5 cigar if you smoke a volume of cigars? Maybe that's the better road to go on.
Exactly. I like that idea actually. I may have to steal that myself.
You just call it the Loomis system, and you're good to go.
Yeah, well, we'll give you full. Yeah, we'll give you full attribution. Yeah, no. Now, I know you guys have kind of come out with a different scoring system. The Stogie Geek system's a little different. Ours is more of a 5 system. Yours is like a 10 system. Ours has the value component. But let's kind of just go back to what I call the 100-point system, which, for better or for worse, is out there.
Right.
When you see a cigar, and look, everyone knows the 100-point system for the most part. When you see a cigar that's a 90, what would that mean? What should that mean to you now? Take your reviewer hat off and look more as a consumer. What would a 90 cigar be in your book?
A 90 cigar to me is slightly above average, in my opinion. And that's just based on like a conglomeration of all the sites that use a 100-point system. Just because, like I mentioned in the previous segment, if you're looking between like an 85 and a 95-point window for what most people score on, that's kind of right there in the middle. So it's kind of close to the average range, I would think. But I think for the manufacturers, anything that's 90 or above, and it may be for the consumers as well, they see it as, okay, I'm going to target 90 and above as something I'm going to smoke, because I think there's something magical about that 90-point threshold that for some reason that's I don't know, it's just a threshold somehow.
I've heard that a lot, that the 89 is kind of like, yeah, you're kind of like, what did I do wrong to miss it?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that 89 is, damn, I missed it. When I was for example, when I first started doing this and I was factoring appearance in, I had like something like 20 cigars above 94, 25 cigars a year. Now that I've kind of made some changes, I think I got 3 above 94 this year. And it's kind of like I'm still kind of thinking though, you hit the number right on the head, because 90 is above average, not average.
Right.
And that's kind of where I'm looking, is I think, so it kind of means we have to give, I don't want to say we have to, but to get that, there's going to have to be more scores below what I call the 87 mark, which when you get into the 87 mark, it's like almost like a death sentence. It becomes, yeah, yeah. So that's what I see tends to happen with that. So it's but also the way I look at it is this is my interpretation of it. The 88 is that full point's a big difference.
Right.
Even with the 100 points, is like the same with you guys. I'm assuming an 8 and a 7. It's got to be that's a huge difference. I would look at.
Yeah, it's a really big difference. I think only one cigar has gotten an 8 or above from us, and I think that's a correct threshold, at least in our eyes. That it needs to be really good at that point.
Exactly. I mean, so kind of to start wrapping up this segment, what do you think as a consumer? How should consumers look at ratings in your book? I mean, what should they take them with a grain of salt, or should they kind of take them seriously?
I think they can take them seriously. They just have to keep in mind that rating a cigar is very subjective, and with people's differences in palates, just because someone rates it high doesn't mean that somebody else is going to like it. If they don't match up with the person that's given the rating, somebody's 93 can be somebody else's 84. So they have to they can use it as a recommendation, but they really need to try the cigar for themselves to see if that's the right way. Because kind of going into something we were talking about in the first segment as regards to the different Vitolas is that one person's high score for Vitola may be not the right Vitola for somebody else that's reading that. So they need to give it a shot and see how the rating works.
I agree with that. I'm going to add one other thing. When you look at a rating, if you're a consumer, look at the date. If that rating is 6 years old, that rating is probably invalid at this point.
Right. And one other thing I'd put on top of that is you need to look at the range from whatever the source is. So take a look at various ratings from that person or group and say, this is the range that they work in. And what other cigars have a similar rating to the one that you're looking at now, to maybe kind of give you a little bit more direction in what you should think about that. Because if you have a real narrow range, like a 5-point range, there's not a lot of room for variation. So if you have a lot of cigars that score the same points, they're not. I would say if you ask the person, you scored these both the same, which one do you like better? They're obviously going to have a choice. But you don't really know what the differentiator is between those two when they have the exact same score. So it's kind of another question to ask, and we always push for people to ask us questions. So if they had a question about our system or why we scored 2 cigars the same way or whatever it is, I want people to ask me. I'm completely open to helping them understand my thought process and the scoring of it.
That's very important. No, and I would agree. And yeah, totally would agree with that. Some people score, so some reviewers score higher and some people score lower, and it's not
right.
It's nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging,
right.
but you want to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah.
So that concludes our Debonaire Ideal segment for this evening. We are going to actually go to a quick message from our sponsors, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this unbanded that we've kind of been smoking through. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned.
The legend has been reborn, introducing the new Hoyo de Monterey. At Hoyo, they're about craft. From seed to soil to sunshine and rain, they obsess over their labors. With skillful hands and passionate souls, they create. They do not settle. They do not concede. They are Hoyo de Monterey, and this is their craft. Experience the uniquely handcrafted Hoyo de Monterey at hoyocigars.com. The highly sought-after Punch Rare Corojo is back for 2016. Rare Corojo is made with a dark Sumatra wrapper and fillers from Honduras, Nicaragua, and the Dominican Republic, giving you a powerful yet rich smoke. These highly coveted and revered cigars are only made in small quantities once a year, so get them while you can. This is a punch classic that you can't pass up. CAO has brought you iconic cigars over the years. Brasilia, Italia, La Traviata, done in a playful nature with a unique twist. Travel to the exciting world of CAO and back in just under an hour with any of the groundbreaking CAO World Blends. Test the boundaries of style with new age brands in the 95 rated Flathead. Honor the past with new classics like Pilon. Treat your palate to an array of flavors with Soulfire and Moon Trance. At CAO, the experiences are limitless. So what's your next move?
Hey, we're going to get into our Unbanded, but I just want to read a couple of quick comments we got from this last segment from the chat room, which I think were really good comments. Fatboy writes, just my opinion, but I don't buy under a 90 or a fiber rating. So I thought that was really good because he's got a threshold. He's got some criteria there. So that's excellent. Exactly. And then Up in Smoke says, I don't pay much attention to ratings anymore, which is totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, if he wants to take the content of the review rather than the actual number, then that's perfect too.
Yep, exactly. So, just kind of for the guys in the studio, you're gonna message me the unbanded answer because I don't know what the cigars we're smoking. Paul usually plays Karnak. So he's got the envelopes, and someone plays Ed McMahon in the studio, and he puts it up, and he rips it open, so he's got the envelope. But since we don't have an envelope system here, we're gonna have our production guys will actually give us the cigar on cue. But let's talk about the cigar. So it was a torpedo. It appears to be a darker wrapper. I want to say it's a Maduro. But it's a darker, more maybe I would say maybe it's more of an Oscuro looking at this and how it's tasting.
Right.
What are your kind of impressions of this cigar?
It's what I would call having very dark flavors. So it's very heavy on the palate, and then darker flavors. So dark wood, earthiness, maybe some dark chocolate, black coffee, a little bit of bitterness, things like that. So kind of a one word would be dark.
To me, it wasn't it didn't have the characteristics of broadleaf or San Andreas, at least in my book, and that's probably what it is. But because I said that, but it was that darker almost like a darker Habano. I got some of those wood notes, the earth notes. I definitely got that bitter component. I don't think the bitter component was a I actually thought it kind of lent a little balance to some of the other flavors. Not an overwhelming amount of sweetness on this cigar. Would you agree?
Correct.
But also not an overwhelming amount of spice on this cigar either.
No.
But to your point, the flavors, I would say they were heavier on the palate for sure. I mean, they were definitely, but not a nicotine bomb.
No, it's not. I wouldn't necessarily consider it high in strength, but full in body.
Yes, I would say medium strength, full bodied is what I was looking at. I actually thought it was. On a developing palate scoring system, where would you think this would go? And just take a swag at it. I'm not going to hold you to it.
This would probably be like a 5.5, so slightly above average.
I have it as a 5er on ours as well, which is
there you go.
I would say it's slightly above average. And probably like an 80. If I had to say numerically, it's probably it's like an 89. Mm-hmm. But actually, construction's pretty good. I'm enjoying the cigar quite a bit. And like I said, so without further ado, production guys, without the band. Okay, so we're gonna put up the picture without the band. Okay, so there you guys see it. It's using our new Stogie Geeks light box from the G Unit Studios. Nice little oily sheen on that thing, too. And are we going to put it up with the band, or are we just going to... Okay, so here we go. Wow. Did not expect it. Did not expect that.
It seems darker than what I recall that cigar being.
We just did a Stogie Geek Shorts on the Casa Magna, and yeah, it seemed dark. I was thinking... Now, that does use a Habano wrapper on it, but it's a Colorado, and I was thinking more of an Oscuro with this thing.
Yeah.
Now, again, it kind of goes to size matters with this because I smoked the Diadema on the Stogie Geek Shorts, and it was fantastic. I mean, this one was good, but it wasn't up there with that Casa Magna there.
Right.
Interesting. What are your thoughts on Casa Magna in general?
I've enjoyed the ones I've smoked in the past. I think that there might have been like one or two that were like stars, but overall, I think that they're probably good middle of the road type cigars.
Yeah, Paul and I, we just published a Stogie Geeks shorts on the Casa Magna about, well, actually last week or 2 weeks ago we did, because we didn't do one last week. And, our impressions of it was really a cigar that we, again, going back to Cigar of the Year and ratings, it was a cigar, when that came out, I think it changed the game with Cigar of the Year, in that the Robusto, which got the 2008 Cigar of the Year, it was a $5.25 cigar at that time. And
Right.
for folks to get their hands on a $5.25 Cigar of the Year, I think it introduced a lot of smokers into cigars at that point.
Yeah.
Which kind of set the whole $5 to $7, like, proved you could get those cigars at that value. So I actually think it did a lot of good. But again, this is a good case of the cigar varying by different size.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So any other final thoughts on this?
No, I'm surprised. Like I said, it's definitely appears to be darker than what I remember most of the
It looked
most of
darker.
those cigars looking like.
It looked darker and it tasted darker.
Yeah, I just don't remember it being this full body.
No, me neither. So actually, I got another question for you before we kind of wrap this, because you have a lot of experience doing the blind reviews, right?
Right.
Do you think when you looked at this wrapper, all right, which it looked darker, okay,
Right.
did that immediately play into your impression that that's how you perceive this, and as you're kind of getting the flavors, did that kind of come into your head?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I've really tried to train myself to not have an expectation going into it, even though you don't know the band, but even just going based on the look of the wrapper or the ring gauge or anything like that. So I really go in with no expectations. I really want the cigar just to present itself. So, like I said, I try my hardest to not be influenced by looks of the cigar.
I agree, but I'm bad at it. So,
Right.
great example is the Laranja by Espinosa. Have you smoked that?
Yeah.
I will say in most cases I've gotten orange citrus off that cigar.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen
And-
a lot of people say that as well.
Yeah. And Fernando Zacharias, the national sales manager, he will bust my balls on this. There's no orange citrus in that flavor profile. Hector, there's no orange citrus in that flavor profile. And so when I smoked the Callexa, I almost was like the opposite. I had okay, they're telling me there's not orange citrus, so I suddenly had to kind of train myself. I still think there's a little bit of orange citrus in it, but I think to that point, the orange band, the name orange, it kind of played into that. I'm wondering if I think with me it may have played. I don't know. This one really tasted like those darker flavors you got. It just did have a Colorado taste to it. So I'm
Right.
excellent.
Yeah, great. But that's one of the good things about smoking cigars blind, is that being surprised is a good thing.
Yeah, Paul and I, like I said, we have more of these. And what we do actually is we have executive producer Keith actually goes into the Havana Cigar Club next door, and he kind of works with Brenda sometimes, who's on the show, and she picks out some cigars for us to smoke. So last week, for example, Paul got it. It was he smoked the Avion. It was the Avion 2012 actually, which
Wow.
I had no clue. He nailed it last week, which was really
Nice.
good. So this one I wouldn't have even, the only thing I would have said is it was made in Nicaragua. It had Nicaraguan tobacco. That was the only thing I would have said on that.
Right. Yep.
Casa Magna wouldn't have even been if I listed 50 cigars, it wouldn't have been that one.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. We will come back and we will both go through some smokes of the week. So stay tuned.